Okay, good morning. This is day 77 of making little videos to describe a day or thought in the life of this schizophrenic Dominic. Sane thoughts in the life of schizophrenic Dominic. Uh, I do not think that I have gone crazy and that I uh, am diseased, but I do experience schizophrenia, and I will post, I think, at the end of this little intro here where I give the topics to these posts that I will give a link to my book that I have written. And if you like what I have to say, you can check out that book. It's called Unveiling the Schizophrenic Tradition. Day 17 and day 45 of these videos on YouTube and where I post them on various social media platforms, including on pinned posts, describe why I call myself a schizophrenic rather than targeted individual. In day 45, it discusses the intro of why I make these videos. Okay, so gonna get into a couple of family news. The day in the life of me as schizophrenic. I'm a human, and I have family. And I went down to see my niece Ella, and she did really, or she was doing really well. And she's a little baby niece, and she's about 5 months, 4 months old or whatever now. I think 5. And she very happy baby, very content little baby. She's getting a lot of love from her parents, and she's become having all these little personality traits as she's getting older here. So it's cool to see, and I got to do some funny faces as an uncle and uh, get her to smile a couple times. We took her on a walk to a park, and as we were walking her back, I was pushing her, and she was getting a little fussy because she was getting a little tired because it was a long walk. And she saw a doggy, and she doesn't talk, but I was like, "It's a dog." And when I said that, a little tear came into her eyes. She was almost about to cry, which is like the first time we've ever seen me and my mom and dad that we've ever seen her cry. So unfortunately, I pointed out an animal, and I think it startled her, or I don't know. It could have been the lady with the red hair that walked by, and I said hi to. It could have startled her that I was talking to some random person like that. I don't know. So, but she's happy. She's a pretty happy-go-lucky baby. So it's cool to see her, and it's always a joy to see Ella and Colin and Kiana. So that was cool. It was a day trip, and my niece Scarlett was in a play called Yearbook, and it was written in 1999. And she played the part of Kathy, which was a pretty cool part for her. It's the part she wanted, I think. And it had kind of a lyrical style to the dialogue, it was a monologue at one point, but it was definitely dialogue. And she nailed it really well, even though she was recovering from pneumonia. She had pneumonia basically 2 days earlier, was out for the count, and she bounced back and got up there and did it. You could tell by her voice she was not 100%, but she did an incredible job, and she did really well. And all those kids did really well in the play, and it was cool to see the little Arroyo Seco play uh, there. And it was a lot of kids had to fill in because a lot of kids were sick, and you couldn't really tell. I thought the kids that filled in did a really good job, and yeah, so definitely cool to see her go into these new shows and stuff that she's doing a little bit older content, a little bit like, or I guess junior high content, or they were playing high school kids, but yeah, so uh, she Scarlett does. She's getting better and better, and it's always a joy to watch her. And I don't get quite as nervous anymore watching her because I feel like she's gonna do a good job. So she's really great. So yeah. Uh, okay, so I was gonna get into something here called Mary Todd Link. Okay, not something called, but Abraham Lincoln's wife in the Abraham Lincoln book I'm reading. She apparently had bipolar, and she came from this wealthy family in Kentucky, and a very powerful, like kind of wealthy, established family in Kentucky. And Lincoln married into that family, and like the old politicians would do, stuff like that. And said that she had bipolar, and that her her family members all had mental illness and stuff like that. Like her brother, I think one of her brothers and one of her sisters, and her maybe even her niece or something. And uh, I thought that was kind of interesting because it was like, well, this is like a political family, and they're all getting like mental illness. And I know with my experience, my mental illness is inflicted, and so it's uh, we're not we're not a political family, but we've had people work at the White House. My sister, I went to protest, so I'm political that way. So uh, my family has gone to protest in the past and things like that. So I thought it was really interesting. Like people who are of a political mind get mental illness. Now, obviously, mental illness is widespread. Like 22% of the population has mental illness or something like that, or depression, or treatment for psychiatric drugs or something. So it's a little bit more widespread, but I don't know. This is way back in the day, so back in like the 1800s, they were treating people for mental illness, and in this particular wealthy family. And I thought, like, I wonder if there's like a control mechanism, goes way back into the 1800s, surrounding Lincoln, and yeah. So I started thinking that, and I don't really have any way of knowing. I have to sneeze. I'm sorry, but I do know that when I read this book, there's some synchronicities to Lincoln's story to my life story, and I'm not saying I'm Lincoln, but I think that maybe there was like a schizophrenic reality going on, and I can't really tell. Okay, so yeah, in Matthew McConaughey's book, he punches a wall. He punches a door in because he gets upset that the Dooleys weren't going to let him leave, and he was trying to take the high road and stuff. And he got really upset, and he was like telling the Dooley, "I'm not going to live with you anymore in Australia while my time is here. I want to go and live with this other family." And so he got really pissed off and punched the door. And I thought that was kind of funny. And yeah, so I can relate. I punched a wall before in my youth when I was confounded by the schizophrenic reality before I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I'm a lot more mellow now. I would never do something like that. So, uh, yeah, I can relate. All right. So, not to the wanting another family though. I love my family. Okay, so in David A. Hughes' book, he describes the language of psyops, and it's all about he discusses how psychological operations will use different languages as a way to war on your mind even more. Like, for instance, in the targeted individual schizophrenia world or whatever, they will use stuff like different names for mind control. there'll be mind control, there'll be neuro weapons, there'll be biohacking, there'll be brain hacking, there'll be EEG heterodyning, there will be uh, brain control, just mind control, brain control, like just all over the place, and it's done to like splinter up how you talk about something. So I was wondering a little bit, like David A. Hughes is saying, like there's a built-in propaganda system to how these things happen, and I actually think there's a built-in propaganda system to the targeted individual language that we use. And he's talking about it in the sense of COVID-19 and unvaccinated versus vaccine free and what terminology you want to use. And now I don't even know if you should say don't take. Never came to a conclusion on that myself, where I said where should you take the vaccine or not take the vaccine. I never really came to a conclusion. I just read this book and tell you what this guy has to say. Uh, you know, because they lie all the time, you think like everything's a lie, but not everything is a lie. You know, it's almost like a test in reason. It's an intelligence test. Everything that they do and these things are intelligence tests, including like 9/11 and stuff like that. It's all test in reason and intelligence tests. Like who will you trust, who won't you trust, and they're testing people on that level. So yeah, he says language of psyops is like built into the language. Like we have to. He thinks that you should use different languages that we come to conclusions on and stuff. But even when you do that, you're splintering up the language. Like for instance, I'm using schizophrenia to describe myself as a schizophrenic because it's the mainstream way people talk about these behaviors and experiences that people happen that are in this 1% sliver of population. And so I just say, well, we should examine what schizophrenia ever was. And so, in some sense, I'm splintering off from the targeted individual, but then I'm also adhering to David A. Hughes' notion that there's propaganda in psyops. So I think that it's an entire cognitive war, and you have a situation where uh, it's it's an entire cognitive war, and targeted individual phenomena and language is part of it. Now, doesn't necessarily mean that it's all wrong because, you know, I just use schizophrenia. Anyways, but let's just talk about the language of psyops and how it splinters all around and it's all done for confusion and stuff. I'm not trying to contribute to it, but I'm actually adhering to like a singular language of schizophrenia and talking about it in that manner, like examine what schizophrenia is. All right, I posted a thing on my thing called Dark Maga, and it is all about PayPal Mafia and Peter Thiel and JD Vance and how they selected JD Vance to be the next guy that's going to take over for Trump and implement this basically technocracy or tech autocracy or monarchy, whatever they're doing with Elon Musk or whatever. And you can read the post I put on Facebook. I'll try to post it to other places too. And it's very interesting write up, and it talks about this guy that this dark MAGA. He wears the dark hat, and actually I know that in the mind control program that the dark hat is something that people wear when there's white hats and dark hats, and the dark hats are the ultra bad guys, and he's walking around with the dark hat, kind of like a statement, like back off of me or something like that. That's what Elon Musk is doing, and interestingly enough, this guy called Mencius Moldbug or whatever wants to do away with the media because he says the media is a cathedral, and he wants to create like a monarchy style media where there's a CEO king of the media, and they want to destroy the government and stuff. So yeah, they want to install some sort of like monarchy CEO kingdom of technocrats of Silicon Valley and stuff. All right. Thank you so much. Goodbye.